Welcome back to another Wednesday live training where every Wednesday I go live talking about all things related to your marriage, relationships, and fatherhood so that you can be a better man, husband, brother, father in all those areas because guys, it's all connected. It's not just a mindset issue, although that's usually most of the problem, but it's not just a health issue. It's not just a work issue. These things are all connected. And if you're not dialing in all these areas, you're probably leaking energy somewhere. And so I'm trying to give you the skills, the tools, and the tactics so that every week you can go back into your family and level up. You can level up either as a human being and make the culture in your home better. I know for myself, having been unconscious, as I like to say, for the last 10 years of my marriage, but I've been together with my wife for 15 years. And 10 of those years, I was not doing what I was supposed to be doing. I was not a leader in the home. And I didn't know these skills. I didn't have a blueprint. I didn't have a manual. And one of the things I've learned in my own journey from radically changing my marriage in just 3 months to where it is now is that fatherhood is a skill and so is marriage. And most of us don't treat it that way. We just treat it like, well, I hope I'm just going to meet my soulmate and everything's going to work out. When have you ever done that in life and things have worked out? If you did, you got probably very lucky. But for most of us, we go to school to get degrees to have better careers. If we want to get bigger muscles, we go to the gym. And this is the gym. This is the dojo, if you will, where every week I just try to empower you and give you new ideas so that you can be a better man, husband, and father. Now, this is 6 of 6 this week. We're going to be talking. I've been talking this whole series. I've been doing a series the last 6 weeks in a row now, talking about frame control, how to win arguments, how to win conversations, be a better negotiator, and therefore be a better leader in your home. One of the big breakdowns I see for most men is their communication. They don't know how to communicate effectively with their wife, and they don't even understand the patterns that are happening. There's a lot of other deep things that we talk about in my one-on-one coaching program or group coaching program with the men, but these are some of the skills that you were really going to want to have to not only, like I said, manage conversations and manage damage control or conflict resolution, but you're going to be a better negotiator if you've watched any of the 6 videos that I just put out. Now, the last couple weeks, if you've missed any of the other videos, go back and check them out because they're going to really give you a good foundation of how to be a better communicator and win arguments and conversations. Now, the first big thing we talked about was your inner frame. How do you manage your internal state? The second video, we talked about negative emotions and how those play and show up in our day-to-day lives. We talked about how do you actually control. Video 3 is a really good one. We talked about how do you actually control the narrative in a conversation or in a conflict type of argument so that you can actually come out winning. We talked about some of the cultural frames that we see play out, the little nuances that you may not even notice, such as things like, fashion, your speech, the way you actually talk, the status that you have in your life. We talked about how to take control if you lose it, how to regain it back. And now this week, we're going to talk about actual frame attacks and frame addiction and why understanding these 2 concepts are going to really round you out so that you can not only be a better communicator, but be able to, I don't want to say manipulate because that's very Machiavellian, but be able to essentially control the narrative. And I think when you actually do the deeper work that I'm all about, this isn't about hacks and little tricks. This is about mastery. And when you start to master these concepts, you're going to go out, like I said, and be a better human being and a better man in general. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Joel Evan. And for 15 years, I was a first responder. And I turned that all away to become a coach and dive deep into this work. And like I said, my marriage was a wreck for 10 years before I figured some of these stuff out and hired all the best coaches in the world, took all the courses, probably spent over $100,000 in the last 10 years to figure out this in my marriage because it was lacking. And I did all these accomplishments. I'm a best-selling author. I did all these things that on paper look great, but it didn't really matter. It didn't move the needle in my family. And it took me a lot of turmoil and a lot of coaching and a lot of deep work to figure out what it was that was missing. And I finally have that. I had that aha moment and I've recreated that for you guys. So if anyone's interested in doing some of the deep work with me and the other men that I coach in our community, reach out to me and I'll tell you a little bit more about our Limitless Fathers group and how you can be involved and do the work as well. Now, let's talk about frame attacks and frame addiction in today's training. One of the big things you need to understand is that your arguments in your private life, they're not about winning or losing. They're about solving problems. But Whenever you take the orientation of, I'm going to win in a situation where the goal isn't really to win, you end up getting the results that you want. How many of you have maybe crushed your opponent or won a debate or won the argument with your wife, your significant other, but it didn't make anybody feel any better? Matter of fact, I had a friend who was a lawyer, and he was a very accomplished DA. And he ended up telling me in one of our close conversations that the skills that he cultivated as a DA were the same ones that destroyed his marriage. Because he couldn't turn off the need to win every conversation. There's actually this famous Alain de Botton quote that if you win every argument with your spouse, you won't be married and they won't be your spouse in 3 years. Now, if you remember from our last video, the ultimate frame is the fun frame. And it shows that you're a high status and that you're just enjoying yourself. And no one can resist that. No one can resist humor. Anytime I've used humor with my kids or my wife, it's usually benefited me. There's times, obviously, where I bombed on the humor and it wasn't appropriate and it backfired. But most of the time, being humor just shows that you can manage the tension because you know how to manage yourself. And if you're in a position of authority, even as a father or a husband, and you find yourself in that position where you don't have authority, maybe where your kids question you or your wife questions you, well, then sometimes your brain actually doesn't account for the difference. And so you actually perceive someone else's aloofness as a direct attack on you. The standing up for themselves undermines you. And you want to be aware of this in relationships in which you are the leader. So you got to start asking yourself, how do I deal with someone who disagrees with me? Are you the first one to raise your voice in a fight? And if it's easy for them to provoke you into displays of anger, if you can answer yes to any of these questions, you need to start actually doing some deeper work and asking, looking into your past and seeing why are those showing up? Because especially in relationships, when you start to notice that your wife and you are not having fun, that's a good time to probably ask yourself, what are the things that I'm bringing to the table that are impairing me or others from having a good time right now? If you're feeling like you need to be the center of attention or you need to be in control, well, that indicates a frame addiction, which we're going to talk about today. Because a lot of times we feel like, she just disrespected me. This is often evidence that you're uncomfortable with them voicing their opinion because you're addicted to the frame in that particular relationship. I'm guilty of this, guys. For, like I said, 15 years, I was a first responder. Being in control was actually a really good thing because if you weren't in control of a scene, you could die. Someone else could die. Their life was on the line. So controlling the dynamics of a scenario, very important just for my own livelihood. Then I grew up with a dad who also controlled everything in our house. And so that's my pattern. That's what I just grew up with. That's a good thing to do. But we know that a lot of times in marriage and in family, being in control of every single situation is just not healthy. So if you're addicted to your frame, here's 2 things you can do. Number 1, start to develop some awareness when you get triggered and start tracking all the times that you get triggered. Just do it for 1 week. Okay? See where these patterns are showing up. See where you start to get triggered all the time. Then we can start creating some data around what's actually really happening and not this some like subjective thing. We can be very objective about it. And number 2, you're going to have to inspect your past. I mentioned that earlier. Somewhere in your past, you've probably replicated how you're acting now. And so maybe you got upset in the past when other people stated their opinions. And guess what? I guarantee that relationship, it probably is broken. You probably have some past relationships that fell apart because you felt like you needed to be in control of those situations. Now, before we jump into frame attacks, I want to leave you with this one big idea. And that's most of us will do everything to avoid pain rather than gain pleasure. And so for this reason, getting into difficult conversations or arguments with our spouses is something that most of us try to avoid. But I want you to reframe that because tension is actually good. Tension is a natural part of negotiation. Being averse to creating any will result in you having a difficult time getting the outcome that you want. So don't worry about making things awkward or tense during these moments, as most people who are regularly involved in negotiations, they have a high capacity to deal with the feelings of tension. And they rarely hold grudges against people after an agreement has been reached. How many times have you ever actually reached an agreement? Like it's a win-win. Everybody feels good. No matter what tension it took to get you there, when there is some closure. And there is like, all right, everybody's winning. Like everybody forgot about the tension that like occurred, right? So just remember that tension can be actually what's going to equal growth for you on the other end when you start to look at it that way. When you start seeing tension as bliss, man, your relationship is going to unlock. Now, let's get in the second part of this training, frame attacks. Okay? Now, we've learned already from the last couple of trainings what happens when you're in someone else's frame, or how to dismantle frames and how to take them back. Now we're going to actually discuss how you define yourself when your frames get attacked. So how you should deal with a logical attack, for example. A lot of people will try to use logic on you. They'll try to say, well, like, show me the facts, right? At the end of the day, you just need to remember this. It's just rhetoric. So if you keep trying to use logic against somebody, it's going to be the person who has the most facts that takes back that frame, right? My wife used to do this to me all the time. I'd tell her how I was feeling in the past about certain situations. And then she'd always say, well, like, give me an example, like point it out to me. And she always wanted proof. And that used to annoy the hell out of me. I always felt like I had to come back with scientific articles just to prove that my feelings were real. And this was how she was showing up. And guess what? We never got anywhere. So if someone logically attacks your frame, if you zoom out, you're looking at the big picture, right? But if you zoom in, you're focusing on a technicality that they're not addressing. And those are really the two ways that you can shield yourself from anyone that tries to battle you with a logical attack. So remember, zooming in means you're going to get real technical. Zooming out is something that politicians use all the time. They'll say things such as, hey, let's not get lost in the bigger picture. The details matter. But if they try and zoom in on you, they're going to say, hey, you're getting lost in the details. You're missing the forest for the trees. So if you ever find yourself getting emotional when someone is attacking your frame, a good phrase that you can start to use is, you know what? I've got to leave this conversation. I'm too attached right now. I don't want to say anything I don't mean. Now notice, I didn't say angry. I didn't say sad. I said attached. Because if you're the first to actually label your emotion, you're in more control of the subsequent narrative. So rather than being characterized as belligerent, you're passionate. And this training is about winning conversations that actually matter. So if you're in a situation that matters and you find yourself upset, even if it's a negotiation, take the time to just walk out before you have terms that aren't favorable to you placed on you because you're in this emotional state, right? And I used that recently. Actually, I mentioned on one of the videos, I used that for a negotiation with car insurance. I just bought a new car and the guy was trying to sell me insurance on the back end, and I was tired and I had heard him talk to me all day, and I'm like, I don't want any of it. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe after his big long spiel, he was going to charge me $7,000 for this insurance. And I said, I pushed back the piece of paper and said, I don't want any of it. And he looked at me and he quickly said, how about 50% off? I said, done. So when you're willing to walk away, which I was completely okay with it because I know a lot of these, the back ends of kind of how these deals work, and a lot of the insurance is, it's not, I don't want to say a scam, but it's really bumped up the price. There's a lot of room to move. I knew that. And so I simply said, I'm good. And I was confident that I was going to walk away. He quickly gave me 50% off right then and there. And so it's the same thing with you guys. Any negotiation or conflict resolution, just be okay being able to walk away. When it comes to our spouses, it's not just a typical negotiation. We can't just look at it, everything as binary, and treat it like a car sales, right? We also need to remember that if you do choose to walk away, make sure you set up some time to come back and have that conversation again. Make sure that you can repair or at least have the conversation again. Because if you don't, then it's going to show that you're distant, you're aloof, that you don't care. You're just coming back when it's on your terms. You see how that works? All right, let's talk about probably one of the best frame attacks that you can ever take on someone, and that's attacking their status. Okay, this is one of the probably the most ubiquitous is someone attacking your status. You've felt it before because they're trying to diminish your credibility by calling attention to your status. So things like, did you even go to school? Right? I'm sure you've all heard that one. If someone says something like that, you can easily respond, is that relevant? That's just an easy one that you can use right away to bring back control. Don't feel like you have this need to justify yourself, right? Because justifying yourself and attempting to name any of your bona fides, it doesn't even matter. It's just a mistake because they're attempting to frame themselves as the authority of what is credible and what isn't. And you're never going to come up as enough by their valuation, no matter what you say. And so there's really no weaker frame than the frame of trying to convince someone, because it leaves the power in the hands to validate your frame. People are also going to attack your status by attacking certain features of you, implying that you have a low status. And that could be just talking about how you dress, calling you a racist or a socialist. You hear this all the time with the ist, socialism, racism, capitalism, all the isms and ist. That's how they will try to categorize you. And you got to remember to have a strong inner frame and be the person that is impossible to offend. Nothing shakes you. You're Teflon. You're bulletproof. If you're easily offendable, then the less confident you are, and therefore the weaker frame you have. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this training. This wraps up our frame control, how to win conversations and arguments. This is part 6 of 6. Go back and watch the last 5 videos if you haven't. This is a really dynamic training that I did for how to be a better communicator and how to understand a lot of the nuances that happen, not only in negotiation, conflict resolution, but just communication in general. And when you start to kind of see things in this paradigm of frames, I think you're going to have a really better understanding of how you're showing up, how your spouse is showing up, and how people are using frames all throughout their lives and there's our daily interactions. And it's going to make you better at everything that you do in life, and it's going to make you a better leader, and that's the most important thing. That's why I do these trainings. So I hope you enjoyed this. Have an amazing rest of your week. Again, if you're interested in learning more about some of my coaching and some of our programs, we have an app coming out in the next week, so stay tuned to that Elite Fatherhood and Husband app that's coming out. A lot of awesome stuff in the app that I've included, including the habit stack, and multiple things, multiple courses, free courses that I've shot. The communication module is going to be in there. So check that out. Stay tuned for that. That's coming out this week. I've also got multiple group coaching programs and offers so that I can find anybody where they're at in their, whether it's financially or just wherever they're at in their life, that I can help support them. I've got free guides, and my wife and I just started doing couples coaching. So if you and your wife want to work and accelerate your marriage a lot quicker than just working with one person, let me know. Go ahead and just comment below or DM me and reach out, and I'm happy to get you the details there. Again, have an amazing week. I'll talk to you guys next week.